Okay, my lovely subscribers and visitors, welcome. And I'm just going to get to the point. Um, I've done many videos on Natasha, or at least quite a few, particularly last year. And I tried to give Natasha a fair go. I was objective, I was critical, but I always was tried to be fair and balanced in my views when it came to Natasha. There are things about her personality that I find engaging. You know, she's very charming. She knows how to tell a story. She has a way of drawing people to her. And there are certain aspects of her personality that I find very pleasant and inviting. However, this is my final conclusion of Natasha based upon a live stream that I listened to a few weeks ago, and I just stopped listening to it within a few minutes. She was setting up another fund, and she claimed that she wanted to reach 20% of this fund within a certain time frame. And I just thought to myself, all right, I'm turning this off. I don't want to hear anymore. Um, After all the years of people saying that she's all about ka-ching, 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 that's the conclusion I've come to with Natasha. And this is not about saying that she's no good. You know, she might have some admirable qualities, but when it comes down to it, she's all about that, getting money. And, she really shouldn't be still here doing that. And it seems to me that she will just do anything to continue and to continue and to continue to reap. And at the end of the day, I think it's not a good look. And I think enough is enough now. So my final thoughts on Natasha is that she's all about that, getting money from people. And that is her whole purpose of being on YouTube. So that's my final conclusion when it comes to Natasha, that the things that people have been saying about her in terms of her starting funds and stuff like that, it's true. That's my final conclusion. I tried to give her a fair go, and I was objective, and I was balanced in my opinions of her. But when it comes down to it, that's all Natasha is about. Anyway, moving on to Critical K, and I'm going to be talking about a few different things in this podcast. Critical K, I've done quite a few videos on her as well, because one of the things I do on my channel is talk about other creators. It's a known thing. I don't hide from it. My channel is about human behavior primarily. And one of the subjects or topics that I explore is the human behavior of creators and other creators on social media. So Critical K was a friend of the Watts for a time, and very critical of Shanann Watts, to say the least. I have recordings of Critical K just going after Shanann, and there was a clip of her soundbite in the Netflix documentary of the Watts case, where she's just going at Shanann. And this is something that she did. She went at people, and she did it to another family, and they were able to get her they were able to get her taken down. They were able to hold her responsible, and she now owes these people over 500 grand. Now, I knew that she was never going to pay them 500 grand, because I don't think she has 500 grand. And even if she did have 500 grand, I didn't think that she was ever going to pay these people. Christian Andriacchio's family. Now, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right. I apologize if I'm not. So, Critical K has apparently opened a Facebook page or another social media page where she is asking for help. And here is the post. I'm not one to panhandle and beg. Yes, you are. You were always asking for donations. Even when you were taken down, you started another channel and you asked for donations. When you started doing a certain case, you asked for donations for that. And you made up all kinds of nonsense about a said person being in South America, and that person was nowhere near South America. But anyway, she says, I'm not one to panhandle. I'm not reading the whole thing. I'm just reading parts of it. I'm not one to panhandle and beg, but I'm also not afraid to ask for help. I could use some support as I begin to venture back into writing and doing shows. Depression and low self-worth has taken an enormous toll. Oh, poor you. If you can please support my Patreon or here on Facebook, I send any assistance you can, or send any assistance you can. I humbly thank you. Now, as far as I'm concerned, that's just a begging bowl announcement. That's all it is. She's just begging. That's what she's doing. This is why I talk about other creators, probably just as much or even more than the cases that I've covered on this channel. Because some of the creators have more fascinating or just as much fascinating stories as the actual cases that I've covered on this channel. I mean, Critical K, she had 15,000 subs on her first channel. That got taken down because of all this. Then she started a new one and she tried to come back. And she asked for donations. And she avoided and evaded as much as she possibly could. And, this is what she's ended up with. But, as far as I'm concerned, you reap what you sow. That's what that's my explanation for her. It's karma, and karma can be positive and it can be negative. And for her, it's, the latter. I remember the days when AD was here and he asked for donations for this and donations for that, donations for a book he was writing, donations for a documentary he was apparently or supposedly making. We never saw that documentary. He never made a documentary. And apparently this documentary was going to be picked up by Hollywood executive and producers. And he was going to be a big star and he was going to finally get his credit for The Shadows. Never happened. He pocketed the money for the documentary. And, there is a way of doing things on here. Start a YouTube channel. Put out content. Get paid that way. There's ways to do it legitimately. There's nothing wrong with wanting to make money. Do it legitimately. Start a YouTube channel. Get the ball rolling. Put out content that people will engage with. And make money that way. There's no need for all this begging bowl behavior. I'm currently watching or trying to watch the trial of the Jennifer Doulos case, the Troconis trial. Now, Jennifer Doulos disappeared on September the 27th. No, she was born on September the 27th. But she disappeared on May the 24th, 2019. Now, I was so interested in this case. At first, I was just full on interested. I watched countless documentaries. Any documentary that was put out on this case, I watched. Jennifer Doulos lived in a beautiful house in New Canaan, Connecticut. Now, I've been to Connecticut as a child. And it's very much like England, in fact. I stayed in a large house in a very upmarket neighborhood. And it's very much like, it just feels like England. It's almost like it was a place or a town or, it's a hamlet that's very similar to England or wants to be England. And it's, she lived a charming life. Her husband, Fotis Doulos, was a Greek immigrant, educated, had a lot of money. They had, I think, up to 5 children. And one day she finds out that, things start going wrong in the marriage and she finds out that her husband is seeing somebody. And then suddenly she disappears. And I personally don't think she's still here. And I was so interested. Like I said, I would get any kind of information I could on this case. And then what happens? Fotis Doulos decides to take himself out of the equation. And so his girlfriend is now left to take, to bear the burden of what happened. And she's now on trial. Troconis is now on trial. So I'm watching that case. But, sometimes the cases of other creators are more, the human behavior of other creators is just as fascinating to me as the cases that I watch. So, as I told you, I am watching this trial at the moment, Troconis, and Troconis is basically the NK of this case. She's like what Nicole Kessinger is to the Watts case, to this case. She was the third party. They say three's a crowd, and the woman in the black and white photograph is Jennifer Doulos. Fotis Dudas's ex-wife. We don't know where she is. She's been, she's not here. She's not with us anymore, and that's been declared legally. Fotis Dudas and Michelle Troconis started a relationship. These were wealthy people. The Dudas marriage was, a big house, 5 children, private schools, well educated, good health care, living in Connecticut, trips to St. Bart's, ski vacations. That was the type of relationship that they had, but obviously they ran across problems. Fotis Dudas was educated, born in Turkey, I think, and grew up in Athens, which is a place I've also been to. Lovely city. Some people say Athens isn't beautiful, but I think Athens is beautiful in a very rustic way, in an ancient way. It doesn't have the glamour of some cities, but there's something about the rustic beauty of Athens that I just find very beautiful. And he came to, Fotis Dudas came to America as a young guy, as a student, got educated, has degrees, qualified, and ran a real estate firm. And they appeared to have everything on the outside, but obviously their marriage ran into problems, and he started a relationship with Michelle Troconis, who's now on trial. Apparently, according to Jennifer Dudas's parents, or mother, not parents, mother, Jennifer Dudas herself was a socialite. She came from an affluent background. She was also educated. Her parents had a lot of money. So he married, Fotis Dudas really married into a family that had a lot of money. And according to Jennifer Dudas's mother, he owed them 1.7 million or something to that effect. Apparently Fotis Dudas was loaned 1.7 million or something to that figure, something close to that figure, for whatever reason, I don't know. And according to Jennifer's mother, he didn't pay them back, or her back. And I think probably they ran into money issues into the marriage, maybe for whatever reason. A lot of times things appear to be glamorous and glorious on the outside, but when you look beneath, when you examine beneath the surface, you start to see problems and cracks. And that's the same way with the Watts case. It's the same way with the Simpson case. And a lot of cases, things seem great on the surface until you start to look underneath. And, Fotis and Michelle, they were seen discarding items not long after his ex-wife seemed to just, no one could find her. They were seen discarding items along a route, not long after she vanished. And so that's partly why she is now bearing the burden of all of this. But also because he took himself out of the equation. And as far as I'm concerned, innocent people don't take themselves out of the equation. He had 5 kids. He should be here looking after them, or at least trying to regain custody of them. Because I think at the time this all happened, Jennifer Dudas had physical custody of the children. Legally, they had joint custody, but she had physical sole custody of the children. She was granted that. And I think that probably led to quite a lot of resentment. So anyway, I don't know everything about this case. Michelle Troconis, I think she is a South American socialite, 49 years old. I think she comes from a wealthy family herself. I am not 100% sure. Her sisters say she's the most kindest, most wonderful, sweetest person you could ever meet, and that there's no way she could be involved in any of this. They say that she's just a wonderful, lovely, loving person. So I'm watching that trial at the moment, and I'm seeing what happens there. And so, I just wanted to feed you in on a little bit of background information to this case, and that some of you will know this case very well. Some of you will know it better than I do, and others of you might not know this case at all. Now we've come to the final part of the podcast, and I did wonder whether I was going to put this part in the beginning, but I thought, no, I'd leave it till the end. Pork chops, one of my favorite cuts of meat. Very affordable, even though food prices have gone up, they're still very, very affordable. and it's one of my absolute favorite cuts of meat. My favorite way to make pork chops is in an apple butter rum sauce. It's absolutely so delicious, this recipe. Just absolutely delicious. But one of my subs was telling me that every time they make pork chops, their pork chops come out dry. And for anyone who that happens to, and I know that we've got vegetarians and we've got vegans on here, but for anyone who eats meat, pork chops are really a still affordable cut, and there's so many ways you can make them. There's so many ways you can cook them. There's so many things you can do with pork chops. And my advice to you, to prevent them from being dry, is to not only use butter, just like you would use butter on a steak, but try to always buy pork chops that are sold on the bone. When they're cooked, when they have the bone in them, what happens is all that juicy marrow permeates through the pork chops and gives it a nice juicy flavor. If you want to take the bone out afterwards, great, but buy pork chops on the bone. Much more flavorful in my opinion. Also, always make sure not to overcook the pork chops. If you overcook your pork chops, they're just going to come out dry. And like I said, use butter as you would on a steak. When they're finished cooking, just dab some butter on top of the pork chops to make them nice and moist and juicy. The other tip that I would give you is to always make a sauce or a gravy with your pork chops. A sauce or a gravy, a good sauce or gravy can make the complete world of difference. So that's just my tips for cooking pork chops, because one of my subs has said to me every time she cooks pork chops, they come out dry.